Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome to Tax Resolution Talk with attorney Lance Drury. For more than 30 years, Lance has been helping individuals and business owners take on the IRS and resolve even the toughest tax problems. I'm Evan Mack, and today's episode is a little bit different. This show has always been about breaking down tax issues, but moving forward, we're expanding the conversation into what it takes to build a successful practice, stay sharp as an attorney, and lead a law firm that lasts. To start, Lance is sharing why he chose to build his career around one niche, tax law, and how that decision shaped everything that followed. This is building a practice around a niche, why tax law became my focus. Lance Drury, sir, welcome back.
Good morning, Evan. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, sir. Lance, this is episode 43 of your show, and today marks a bit of a pivot. Can you share with the listeners how you're expanding the focus of this podcast beyond just IRS problems?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking to you now about why I got into this particular niche of tax resolution work. And I have to tell you, I was a big criminal defense lawyer. I was a public defender for 10 years.
Wow.
Before I departed the public defender system, I ran 8 offices in Southeast Missouri, from Jefferson City to the Boot Hill to West Plains. And so my focus has always been, I've always been on the side of the little guy against the government. And so I did that as a public defender, and I'm doing that now, which is why I made the pivot, because, I want to try to level the playing field. I tell everybody that I'm the guy who protects Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong, with King Kong being the IRS. It's very fulfilling. I love serving people. I love getting great outcomes for people. And as we speak, I have my 2 San Antonio attorneys in Houston, Texas, to launch our Houston office effective November 1st of this year.
It's incredible stuff, though, Lance. But what kind of drew you into the focus on tax law in the first place? What brought you into that niche?
Well, I was sitting in my office late one night. It was about at 10 o'clock, and I came across an article from a gentleman in Colorado, and he talked about tax resolution work. And, that was something that was foreign to me at the time. This was about 2005. And I just told myself I was going to get his books. And so I got the books, read the books. Then he put on a seminar in Tampa, Florida. And so I went to that seminar, and he was starting a tax agent group out in Colorado. So I joined the group. And, at that time, I was not in the St. Louis area. I just had rural Missouri from Ste Genevieve. I did go up to Columbia, Missouri, which is a college town, but it's 2.5 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd drive up there on a Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, even early, and see 4 to 6 people, and then drive back on Saturday. But I just decided one day, well, I wasn't going to get anywhere with this. It was only about 20 to 30% of my practice. And I thought I can do this on my own. So I came into the office one day, and I told all my legal assistants, in 30 days, we're going to be in St. Louis, and I'm going on the radio. And things have just taken off since then.
So awesome. So how did honing in on such a specific niche, shape the way you've kind of built your practice since, 2005?
Yeah, I've decided I wanted to expand it after having a lot of success in St. Louis. We have by far, we're the biggest practitioner in the St. Louis area. And the reason I know that is several years ago, a revenue officer told me I had by far more clients in his inventory than anybody else. And we've doubled the size of the office here.
Wow.
And so I was looking, and we looked at Kansas City and Indianapolis and Nashville. And my media guy said, you're going to pay more for media in Nashville, but there's a lot more money in Nashville, which is true, because Nashville is now the place to be in the Midwest. It's growing leaps and bounds. People are coming in from Colorado paying or California paying $200,000 over the listed price for a home. And so it is just taken off. And so that's where I went. Then I decided I would expand into San Antonio. Now we're going into Houston, and I hope the day comes when we go into Miami. and Los Angeles, because Evan, I'm only 72 years old. I'm in the prime of my life. I got to keep going with this business.
Oh yeah, we gonna just open them up all over the place. You know what I mean? Every city in America.
I got to tell you, it's the most exciting thing. I have a charmed life. I love my life. I love doing what I'm doing. This is what I should have been doing a long, long time ago. But you live and learn, and I'm finally in the right place now.
Absolutely. But and speaking of that, though, a lot of lawyers struggle to choose between being a generalist and maybe a specialist. What advice would you give someone who's weighing that decision?
Well, I would say that the practice of law has evolved now, just like medicine, that you
Mm,
need to have a specialist in every area. The problem is, if you're a small town lawyer, you're not going to get enough business just in one area. Normally, some do, but it's few and far between. And most small town lawyers, it's not a very lucrative business. And most small town lawyers struggle. I see small town lawyers with tax problems from time to time. And so I would certainly, my advice would be to specialize, not to be a generalist. I think it's hard to make a living that way. I think it's hard to be an expert in a particular area if you're in 4 or 5 different areas. So my advice would be to specialize if you can.
mm. So when you think back on your early days, what challenges did you face building a practice around law, maybe specifically?
Well, I think that it was, I had an MBA from Washington University, but I think I had a struggle with, how to um, make my business more prosperous for myself and to be able to help more people. I probably had 50 to 60 clients at a time. Well, now we have more than 1,000 in the office. And it's always been important to me to try to help as many people as possible. And so I think the biggest challenge was you can't act like a lawyer if you want to be successful at a law practice. And by that, I
Mm,
mean, a lot of lawyers think it's unprofessional to advertise. Well, you can be the greatest lawyer in the world, and if people don't know about you, you're not going to have a very prosperous office. So
mhm,
you got to get your name out there. You got to take risks. You got to get a niche so that you can focus on one particular area. And the biggest thing was now I think like a business person.
hmm.
I don't think as an attorney because you're not going to be able to help as many people as possible if you just think that you're a lawyer and not a business person.
Hmm. But looking back at your career today, how has focusing on the tax cases influenced the type of clients who come to you?
Well, I don't know if I understand that question completely, Evan, but we get a lot of self-employed people.
Mhm.
70% or more of my clients are small business people because those are the people that get in trouble because the taxes aren't automatically taken out. And
Mm,
everybody thinks running your own business is the American dream. Well, most small businesses, if they don't fail, they're not very successful. I would say that the great majority of small businesses don't make any more than $80,000 to $90,000 a year. When you consider all the inflationary costs we've had in the last few years, when you consider that you have to pay for your own health insurance when you're self-employed, and that you also have to provide your own retirement, well, that's a lot less money than
hmm,
$80,000 to $90,000. So I think it's very challenging, and I think the other thing with small businesses is that we try to help small businesses become compliant in the future. And I think one of these days, we're going to add an additional service here is that after people come to us and we get them back on the right track, that we set something up with them to advise them on how to make their business successful so
wow.
they don't have to hire us again because of tax problems.
Hmm. Hmm. But so for attorneys listening who want to carve out their own niche, what practical steps can they take to stand out?
Well, like I said, you got to get your name out there. I know this is probably old school, but radio has been very successful. We're on the radio in all 3 areas, and that's been successful. a Google pay-per-click. We're getting a lot of cases from that. We send out a semi-monthly newsletter to lawyers and accountants and realtors. And so, that's the best kind of advertising because the referrals don't cost you anything except the cost of the newsletter. But something else that I'm starting to do, we probably have not had a big enough presence on social media. We need to beef that up. So I have just started. I've hired a company and we are going to do 30 clips a month. And they guarantee you that by the end of 12 months, you're going to get at least 1 million views or they will refund your money.
Wow.
In fact, after 90 days, their average client has 15.5 million views.
Wow.
Just imagine how many clients that you can get from that, Evan. It's unbelievable. When I came across this, I just thought, well, I got to check into this. And I'm doing podcasts with you. I'm on a national podcast now. I've been on the radio, so it may be a little easier for me because I'm comfortable in front of the camera, and so I really think this is going to be really going to skyrocket and really going to take off and help grow the firm. Hopefully, I'll need 3 times as many lawyers within the next few months, Evan.
Absolutely. So how does your own experience as a business owner shape the way you see the practice of law, though?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, I don't look at the practice of. I think it's a business. I run it like a
Right.
business. I'm an entrepreneur who provides legal services to people, specifically people that get in trouble with the IRS and various state agencies. And so I think that has shaped my view of all this is that you have to treat it as a business. And one of the things that I've done is, you know, you struggle with them. I just had this discussion in one of my growth groups this morning about, it's very important to get the right people on board. And I've evolved in that area over the years. I used to not want to ever hire remote workers. Now I would hire them all the time. They've been very successful. They're some of my hardest working attorneys. They get good results. They want to grow the firm. And so, that's one thing. But the other thing is, and I'm sure there's great enrolled agents out there. I just haven't had any luck. But I would continue to just hire attorneys because they're trained in negotiations. They're trained in argumentation. They're much more client oriented, I believe, than an enrolled agent. And I have some great practitioners. I have the best set of attorneys that I've had since I've done this in the last 20 years. And it's all just going to get better for the firm and for our clients.
And finally, to wrap things up, though, if you had to sum it all up, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from committing to one area of law and building that practice around it?
Well, that's a good question, Evan. I guess that you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in your skills. You got to be able to take risks. When you're an entrepreneur, it really is a different mindset. We think differently, than somebody that's a W. It's not for everybody, but you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in what you do. You're going to make mistakes, but you still got to be aggressive in growing the firm and making those mistakes. And I've made a bunch of them. That's just part of the learning game. And you're not going to be successful if you don't take any risks.
Lance Drury, sir, it's a pleasure as always.
Pleasure being here with you, Evan.
And thank you all for listening to Tax Resolution Talk with Lance Drury. Remember, we'll still be covering the tax issues that matter, but we'll also be discussing the business of law, continuing education, and what it really takes to run a successful practice. For more information, more resources, or to connect with Lance directly, visit lancedrurylaw.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone that might find this information helpful as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.